What's up, barbecue fans? My name is Jake, and today we're doing a brisket video on the Kamado. This is actually an experiment video because every single time I do a brisket video where I hold it overnight, there's one comment I see over and over again. That is, my oven only goes down to 170. So if you Google it, some ovens can be adjusted and you can make them go lower. It's usually an elevation adjustment, but not everyone has that ability. So what I've done is I've done a little bit of research, and I've actually listened to you guys in the comments, and I've picked up something. We're gonna give it a try for the first time, because even if your oven does go down to 150, 160, when you wake up in the morning, it smells like brisket. So we're gonna try something else here, and before we can do that, let's get our Kamado going. So as you can see, we've got a big old piece of, it's actually white oak. It's from my wood pile from the offset. I just cut up some and I put a big old piece down in the bottom, and then we put a chunk on top. And we're gonna go today at 275 to give you an idea. Let's talk about a brisket. So first off, I got out my pepper cannon and made some fresh cracked pepper. One cap is about 3 tablespoons, so I made one cap, and then I did a half cap of diamond crystal kosher salt, and then I decided to add a little bit more pepper and a little bit more salt just to get a little bit more total volume. And as it turns out, I used the whole thing, so it was a good call. But we are using just a Costco choice brisket and got that guy out of the package. The one thing I did before I even brought it inside is I put it in the freezer for about 20 minutes. So that just makes trimming it a little bit easier. And what we did there is we got out of the package and took a piece of paper towel, dried it all off, and then we started taking off the decal fat, the big old piece of fat on the side, took that off, sliced down the side, and then I worked a little bit on the top, get some of that silver skin, some of the thicker fat. But for a change, I didn't work it as much as I would. I just kind of left it, and I worked on the fat cap. Now, when you cut down the sides of your brisket, that allows you to see just how much fat cap you have. And in this case, this one had quite a bit of fat cap on it. We want to get that down to 1/4 inch, so I slowly used my knife and I just worked that down. And you know, the one thing you want to do is on the one end that's going to be thin on the flat, we trim that, we round it off our brisket. And you'll see me throughout this trimming process, I'm kind of poking it with my hand. Why am I doing that? I'm looking for a hard piece of fat. If it's hard, that generally means that it's going to be thicker. Once it gets down to 1/4 inch, it'll be nice and soft all the way around. So I'm poking this throughout the process, and I'm just trimming it down until I was happy with where I was at. And then what we did is we flipped it over. So started on the bottom, we put our pepper and salt on there, gave it a nice sprinkle, did the sides, heavy coating on the bottom. Then we flipped it over and did a little bit more on the sides there, and then just a nice heavy coating on that fat cap. Then what I did is I put it on a rack and I threw it back in the fridge because it's been about an hour and a half or so since I did that. And now let's go get the star of the show and we'll get on the next steps. So here's our brisket. This guy was about 14 pounds when we started. I gave it a pretty good trim. I generally trim my briskets aggressively to begin with. This one did not have much of a mohawk on it, but as you can see, it's looking pretty good. Since it's been in the fridge for an hour and a half, everything is nice and adhered, and we've got a good salt pepper ratio. So all we gotta do now is get this on the Kamado. Now the way we're set up here is I have all my lump and smoking wood on this side. This is my cools side. There's no heat underneath this. The great thing about the Kamado 32 is, look, 14-pound brisket, I can fit it no problem. I could probably get a 16-pound brisket there. Lots of room on either side, and just let it roll. So now, not much to do. Have a sip of rum and coke. Cheers. And I'm gonna go back inside where it's a heck of a lot cooler. Make up some 50-50 water, apple cider vinegar. We'll spray this in about 3 hours. Let's have a look at our brisket. So here we are, it's about 4 hours in, As you can see, it's looking pretty good. I have not sprayed it yet. What I did around 2 hours in, I looked at it, and right along this top section here, it was a little dried out, but I decided just to let it push through. The fat was rendering out nicely and it was starting to self-base, so I left it alone. We were getting a little crunchy around a couple of these edges here, so we're gonna give it a spray just around the sides. And I may spray it one more time, but I think we're just gonna let this self-base for the rest of the time. So it's been a bunch of hours. I actually went out, lost track of time, and I've overcooked my brisket. However, this video is not about cooking the proper brisket. It's actually about the rest. So we're gonna continue on with the video. Look, if you've been around for a while, I show my mistakes. It is what it is. YouTube is full of perfect barbecue content, and that's just not me. So if you like honest barbecue, subscribe down below. Let me show you what we got, and I'll give you a temp reading. I've just put some tallow down there underneath. Tomorrow we're gonna have shredded brisket sandwiches, because if you take a look at this guy, we're at 211 all around it. So much for pulling it off at 195 and wrapping and resting it. As you can see, it's pretty wobbly right now. It's done, right? It's overdone, but this video is all about the rest. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to wrap it like I was. Just got some heavy duty foil here. We're gonna wrap it twice. And we'll put this aside and we'll talk about the whole purpose of this video, the overnight rest. And here we have a turkey roaster. So this guy's got a rack in here, instruction manual, who reads those? And essentially what we've got is we've got a vessel. Look at me getting all technical. But it's got to keep warm. It goes to 150, it goes all the way up to 450, which obviously we're not gonna use. But I can set this at 150, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put, how far off does this sit? Just so it's not sitting on the bottom. Look, this was a 14-pound brisket. Obviously we trimmed it, it's gonna be smaller, and now that it's cooked, it's rendered, but look at all the space we have in here. Give you a good shot of that. All right, so I can get a fist all the way around it. So you could definitely get a much bigger brisket in here. And what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna let this rest until it comes down to about 160. So it's gonna be a few hours. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna stick this in my garage and we're gonna set this to 150. And tomorrow we're gonna try our now shredded brisket and just see how it holds temperature overnight and see how it works. So I'll see you in the morning. Good afternoon. It's been 16 hours since I put our brisket in the turkey roaster, and I'll tell you one thing right off the bat. Instead of putting this in my garage, I said, what the heck, I'm gonna leave it in my kitchen and see what happens. And I'll tell you what, the difference in odor in the house is significant. Can you smell it kind of a little bit in the oven? Yes, or sorry, in the oven. In the kitchen a little bit, but not like it's in the oven. In the oven, I mean, you walk out of the bedroom, it's like, brisket. So that was eye-opening. Number two, I just set it at 150 and walked away. I did let it cool down for a couple hours before I put it in here. The other thing is I turned around the rack. The reason why I had the rack upside down is I was a little worried about sitting on the bottom because I didn't want to get too much heat from the bottom, but it still has a little bit of clearance there, so I decided to leave it alone. This rack has a lot of room around it. Not a very good visual probably, but you could easily get 2 briskets in this, just to give you an idea. And all I did is I unplugged this. I have not even touched it since we spoke yesterday. I know the outside feels warm. The brisket feels warm as well. We'll see how we are for temperature. I was gonna set it closer like 160 or so. I'm maybe just a tick above 150. It's hard to tell. It's a just a digital or a analog dial, so it doesn't really give you a full indication. Let's see what we're at here. We're at 209. That's at the 150 setting. So that's not very promising. Now this is a very inexpensive warmer. It is, I think it was 119 bucks. It got good reviews. I was gonna put it on the keep warm setting and I thought that might be a little too low, but clearly 150 is a little too high. I mean, our brisket was already overcooked when I put it in there. Man, now I don't even want to slice into it. It's gonna be way too hot to slice into. I mean, it looks good. Shit. Well, let's just hold off for a moment. I'm gonna kind of cover this up a little bit, but leave it slightly unwrapped. Take it back inside and let it come down to slicing temperatures so we can have a look at what happens when you hold a brisket at 200 all night long. Be back in a little bit. All right, take two. So it's been a couple hours. We're at 160, 165-ish. Obviously warmer than I would like in a perfect world for slicing. However, I'm hungry. I waited a lot longer than I expected for this. Let's have a look. Let it rain. It's soft. It's just gonna shred. We know this is gonna shred, but we will try and cut into it and see what happens anyhow. So let's have a look here. I'm just gonna skip in here and just see how badly this falls apart. I'm actually shocked it's hanging together. It's hanging together by a thread, but it's hanging together nonetheless. Even a bad brisket's good. It's better than I expected, actually. I expected it to be majorly shreddy and terrible, but it has great flavor on it. See the smoke ring on both sides. So, I mean, I came clean early on. We overcooked the brisket, and then we were set to 150, and it kept it at 200 degrees. So we now know what happens if you store a brisket at 200 degrees. If you let it rest below that, it was probably 170 when I put it in there. It survives, but now I've got to do a whole nother video. I'm going to try the warm setting. This time I'll try it with pork to see if this warmer there will do what we're looking for. And as I said, we didn't have any smell in the house, which was a great thing. That's one of the cheaper warmers I could find, turkey roasters. So I'm gonna try it on warm the next time and we'll see what happens. All I can do is try, fail, and try again. Thanks as always for watching. If you like what you saw, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you soon.